Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the One Africa show at Swahili Nation Network. Welcome to our weekly segments on education in the 21st century. Thank you for your patience and wait. Last week we started a little bit late, and today we're trying to be on time. So I appreciate you all for coming in and joining in. I don't know how many people have joined yet, but I appreciate you. And thank you, Pastor Ezra, for your incredible help and support. And it gets late on your end, but you're always there to really guide us. You're an incredible executive producer of the shows, and it is an honor and a privilege to work with you. Thank you, Mika Shavala, our leader, Chief Executive of the Swahili Nation Network, and your inspirations, your leadership is continue to inspire us to do the thing that we do. So we really appreciate you. Before I jump into a prayer, I would like to take this opportunity to say Eid Mubarak to all Muslims across Ethiopia, across Africa, across Kenya, across South Africa, Nigeria, all over the continent who spent the Ramadan fasting, and then yesterday on Monday celebrated Eid al-Fitr, the 1443rd year in Islamic calendar. And Eid Mubarak to you. May Allah bring you peace and prosperity and blessing to you, to your family, and to the entire continent of Africa. And I appreciate you for that, for the incredible work that the people in the Muslim faith, in the Islamic faith, who are all over the continent doing incredible work, supporting each other, supporting those people who are fortunate, and being incredible community members, and so helping sustain love, compassion, peace, generosity. So this celebration must be an opportunity for all of us who are not necessarily following the Islamic faith, but who really truly believe in the faith that you have in your God and your Creator. And we are with you as you celebrate this important occasion. So I want to start off, like this is a tradition here in One Africa and the Swahili Nation Network. It's a tradition, as tradition permits. I want to take this opportunity to really, call upon the Almighty Creator to be amongst us and with us throughout these sessions and throughout the discussion that we're going to have. So I'm going to do a short prayer. I'm not, an expert in prayers, so I'm just going to, share from my heart what I feel and how I feel and why I feel. Okay. Let's start the prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for being with us and for bringing us to this point, to this time. And we ask that you are with us today in our sessions as we discuss important topic on educations in Africa and education that impacts millions and generations now and those to come. So we ask that you guide our thoughts. We ask that you guide our discussions and help us achieve, reasonable and measurable understanding of what we're dealing with when it comes to education, the education of our children, and the education of a generation, and the education of the continent, and the transformation of the continent as a result. We ask that your presence, your spirit, in our discussion here, and we appreciate the guidance and the support that you provide us. We thank you, our Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. As you can see, I'm not good with prayers, but normally I pray in my language, so when not in English. So it's probably much easier to pray in Amharic. If it was I don't know, for some reason, prayers is I can only do it in my native language. In English, I just can't handle it. I just don't know it. But I think that works. I think it's important that what we do has the backing and the support of the spiritual realm, the one that we don't see, the invisible hands, the invisible presence of God, and we want God to manifest His presence in the things that we think about, in the things that we do, and prayers is essentially one of the ways. So today, I hope to carry the responsibility of being a human created by God, to carry out the purpose and the purpose for which God has put me here on this planet. So the prayer is kind of like sending the signals, necessary signals to really kind of channel my thoughts, my actions, my discussions, my words in the direction of meaning, in the direction of purpose that has a result, that has benefits. So that's what I think of prayer. When I think of prayer, I think of a prayer of like really signaling, orienting, and aligning myself with the purpose, with the meaning for which God has put me here on this planet to be. And hopefully, throughout the discussions today, that carries along. So if I don't stay to that, you're welcome. You're more than welcome to keep me accountable and hold me accountable. So thank you for that. Okay, so we got Sam Tanzan already here. Okay, thank you so much, guys. So I have Mariette is already here. Jonas is here. Badman is here. And Monetezi, thank you for being here. And I've said Tanzan, and then of course Sam. Thank you for all of you for being here. All the supporters that you need for this show, all the supporters that I need to do the show. Okay, to be frank with you, I was like, for the whole of the last week, I've been out of it, so I've not been able to think through exactly on my own what I would really like to be able to do today for the show today, but what I should be doing for the show today. But as I percolate on what to do or what is important, what to cover, one thing that kept coming up was like, now it's time to transition to the discussion of the broader discussion of what are we looking for from our education? What are we looking to achieve from our educations? Like, what is the goal? What should be the goal of education? Like, how would you define the goal to be, the purpose to be? What meaning should education help achieve? So that is the thing that I kept on gravitating throughout the week. So I haven't done extreme amount of preparation like I've done in the past shows, but sometimes you don't need to do extreme amount of preparations. You're already prepared. So I feel like I'm already prepared for a discussion like that. So we've hinted at this, what this the purpose of education should be or is in previous shows that we've done, but we haven't dedicated to it specifically what. like this specific segment for that component of it. But so I'm still not fully awake, so I'm going to continue to drink my coffee, and then not in European style, but American style. So sorry, sometimes once in a while I have to, just wrap it up, finish up the caffeination process. So bear with me on that. So last week we talked about the state of education, and I know, I just want to do a quick recap. The state of education, what are we talking about? Well, we looked at the magnitudes and the size of the educational undertaking in Africa, the size and scope, like at least an estimate of it. Okay, Mike, thank you for welcome to the show. Okay, hey, by the way, please like, subscribe, share, become members, and comment and be engaged. And the reason behind that, and I've said this before, the only way to make what we discuss here, what we cover here at the Swahili Nation Network, very important, very valuable to an audience that is oblivious of the fact that this is going on, is by those of you who are showing up, by just liking. You might not be here the entire show, but if you show up, if you are here, say thank you. Say thank you. A free talk. I appreciate you for joining us. So say I like this. I like this show. There is nothing not to like. Come on, like you have to like the show. It's like this is like I just not liking this show is like, if you don't like a show like this, if you don't like the shows that are coming up here at the Swahili Nation Network, like the incredible show that Tanzan did yesterday, and the inspirational interviews that our chief executive, His Excellency Mika Shafala does, the incredible recaps, and the hidden hands, the diaspora talk, the potential, the Swahili, the newly minted Swahili language show that we just started with. Oh, come on. If you don't like the show like that, what are you going to like? Some stupid show on Netflix? No. Oh, come on. Please. So like, subscribe, okay? Share, let people know that there's a show taking place right now. Let them come here and hear it. I'm sure people are not going to agree with me if they come here. They're not going to agree with you if they come here. There's no question about it. There's a lot of people, there are people who are members here who vehemently disagree with my opinion, my point of view. So it's not like, this is not a show where we tell you the things that you want to hear, the things that you want to agree with. This is a show to cover and uncover really deep and meaningful things that will be transformational, that will be fundamentally altering the course of history. This is a show for creating history, for making history. When I say this show, I don't mean just this show on education in the 21st century. I'm talking about every show. So, show that you like. So yeah, thank you, Mariette. I appreciate that. And subscribe. Subscribe. It's good to subscribe because there are too many shows out there that are seeking your attention. Too many silly stuff out there that are seeking your attention. But when you subscribe and hit the notification, what you get is that much quicker access to information. So Swahili Nation, subscribe. One Africa, subscribe. Okay, so I think, yes, thank you, Ezra, for putting in One Africa, subscribe. One Africa is our backup. It's not necessarily our backup. Not the topic One Africa, but the channel One Africa. Africa is that we have a Swahili nation, which is much more popular, much more subscribed. But we also have One Africa that is dedicated to just One Africa. So we stream these things in those two channels. So we need you to take part in those things and be be proactive. Okay, if you are somebody who wants to thumb your fingers at companies like YouTube or Google and force them to pay, okay, the channel, force them to pay the channel for the advertising they do, the promotion they do, as a result of the popularity of the show. If you want to put it in, then that's one of the reasons why you want to do that. You want to support this thing. Okay, so we are an African media platform. An African media platform concerned with African issues. Okay. Thank you, Merit. Yeah, concerned with African issues. Okay. Today we're going to be talking about education, and every day we have something to talk about, to cover, because there are a gazillion issues in Africa that deserves covering. And so today we'll look at meaning and purpose of educations. Before I do that, I want to just quickly recap what last week. Before I will do that, I want to say that I'm going to be hard on time because I have an appointment. So this show is just a 3-hour show today. So like in about 2 hours and 41 minutes, we'll be done. Okay, so that's it. That covered. So sometimes in the middle, I'll come back and then ask for subscribers and for subscription and membership. Okay. So last week we looked at, there were 364 million Africans between the ages of 15 and 35. Those are high school age to tertiary school age. And we looked at the prevalence of access to secondary school educations and to tertiary school educations. And very, very poor, okay? Very poor, single digits. We looked at the UN data, UN statistics, that shows incredible gap, gaping hole that is the size of the Pacific or the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean put together, okay? On the prevalence and access to education in Africa. We looked at that. We saw how deeply, how the gap is so wide, how the depth of what is missing is so deep. We looked at how bad it is. The state of education in Africa generally is bad. Now, that's not to say they are not good, incredible success stories. We have, I know of like schools at the higher level, like, the African Leadership Academy in South Africa that has grown to becoming African Leadership University. And I know the Herman Gumane International College in Ghana, where I was privileged to go to, is an incredible school that has a motto of knowledge in the service of Africa. And then I know there's a number of people like with multiple initiatives. Sometimes those initiatives are funded and supported by the Gate Foundations, but still very good. And then even my own projects last week we shared about the Labawi Academy. So there are success stories, no doubt about it. There are a lot of good stories. In fact, in terms of even policy, in terms of education policy, I know that a country like Botswana takes education so seriously. I mean, they take the initiative to provide some of the best educational access to their citizens. I know South Africa has some of the best universities in the world. And no question about it. I know in Nigeria, you can access, if you have money, you can access good education. In some African countries, including in most African countries, if you have resources, you can access good education. But what we are talking about is on the scale, talking about somewhere between 300 and 700 million or 800 million, people. That number is what we're looking at. Somewhere between the ages of 5 and the ages of 35, and the breadth and the depth of the educational not just access, but also quality. You could look at the primary educations, and then you realize primary education being like primary enrollment is high, but primary dropouts is high as well. It's how long people sustain through the education system is a huge issue in Africa. So a huge amount of issues that are plaguing the education. And I think, to me, part of the reason why the education system is so weak is not just the resource, which I spend a lot of time talking about, but just the fact that people don't derive meaning from it. People don't see the meaning and the purpose for going to school. Why should I send my child to primary education, and then by 4th grade that child cannot read and write sufficiently for my family? I've actually met people who told me this. Okay, we were not literate, but we're hoping our children will be literate. We send them to school, okay, so that they can read letters sent to us from far away, so that they can read for us, so that they can read, like information that is coming to, so that they become the kind of like the instruments through which we can transact and relate with the world that we live in. But our children don't get that. They're not that competent. So like, you might as well drop out and then help us in the farm, help us in our community. That's usually sometimes that you hear. So purpose and meaning. Okay. Oh, hey, Marie Antoinette. So good to see you. So beautiful to see you here. I appreciate you here. Thank you. So to me, a large part of it is how the society actually organized around properly financing, properly planning, properly organizing and delivering on the promise of education is part of the issue. And I think that's where most of the discussion stays. But I think the other part of the discussion that doesn't get covered as much is meaning and purpose. What is the meaning of education? And what is the purpose of education? If you ask people that question, what is the meaning and what is the purpose of education? Okay? Why do you send your children to school? Because most of in many cases, I'm not saying this is statistically like verified, but in many cases, I can guarantee you, there will be many cases where people will say, you know what, we're sending our child because we're supposed to go to school. We're sending our children because they're supposed to go to school. If they're 10% of the population of the 3 to 800 million, 10%. Oh, Yosef, hey, Yosef, hi there. So welcome to those who are joining us. Really appreciate you. And we can't say it enough. So tell people that this is some serious discussion taking place here, and bring them on board. Very soon, we'll like in the next 10-20 minutes, we'll open up the channel, and then so you can come in and then really like argue and debate issues and interrogate issues here. So about 10 to 20%, less than 10% of the population send their children because the child has to go to school. That is the reason why they're sending. If that's the reason they're sending them, that is usually a recipe for a problem down the line, where it becomes clear that the education the child is receiving is of no value, of no material value, of no tangible value, to a point where I say, why should you send them? Why should my child go to school an hour away, 2 hours away, walking, and when we need to fetch water, when we need to take care of our property, our animals, and our farmland, and when we need to take care of whatever chores that is necessary to be done in the household? and there is a lot of house chores that need to be taken care of. And some of these chores are not like, you know, in the cities, in the urban areas, you know. So some of these chores are like, you know, critical chores. They might mean the difference between being able to feed yourself and not. So if you have about 10 or even less than that percent of the population that send the child because they have to send the child to school because they have to, because they're told to, because that's expectation, without really truly understanding what is their child getting at the end of, what is the outcome of that they are seeking to get for their children, the children that they're sending. Then it becomes it gets to a situation where the purpose becomes very blurry, and it affects commitment on the part of families to keep children in school, despite all the shortages that we talked about in previous shows, despite the fact that there are not enough spaces for the children. There are children that are cramped in one place, or there's not enough chalk for the teachers to, or there's not enough text materials, resources. Despite all of that, and because those things are not necessarily deterring some children from succeeding. Obviously, the fact that there's not sufficient amount of resource doesn't mean that there are children who don't succeed in them. There are millions of children in Africa who succeed in spite of the shortcomings of the education system. So obviously the resource is not the only key factor in the success and failure of a child. And then you try to zoom in and say, like, who are those people who succeed in the education system despite its weakness, despite its shortcomings? Are those children and those with families that somehow, in some way, perceive some measure of tangible benefit that could be derived from the education, that could be derived, and that benefit that they imagine, envision, could be interpreted as being a purpose, can be interpreted as purpose. Like for that child who ends up succeeding, in the education system, regardless of the nature and the substance and the quality of the education they are receiving, the resources that are available for them, regardless of that, they see them. It's often the case, they see some meaning and some purpose from what they're doing. Meaning and purpose for what they do. But they are a very fraction of the society. Small fraction of them. Less than 1%. And I think, like Sam likes to talk about, the super intelligent kids. Okay? Those are the ones. Regardless of resources, they tend to do well. And I've had the experience and the pleasure of teaching many of them. Regardless of the quality of the educational framework through which they go through, they are driven. These are driven children who are sometimes the family is in support of that, sometimes the family is against that. But regardless of that, they see this as a way out of a miserable family condition where they're not valued, when they're not provided opportunity, where they have to labor, they have to find a way to work around the education they are receiving, around the kind of very difficult circumstances of their life. Sometimes that's what happens. But sometimes the family is on their side, but nevertheless, these are people who find some kind of meaning from what they are receiving. And I think that's what I'm trying to zoom in today. I'm trying to zoom in into today. What is the purpose? What is the meaning of education? How do we lay that out? So Sam says, it's not that, okay. Is it just me or does it keep cutting you off for anybody else? Okay. I don't know if okay. Hopefully it's not cutting off for you. Let me know. Okay. Tazna says it's just you. Okay, it's not about them doing well. It is about them doing well for Africa, educating them to a level that they can produce results that will change their country. Oh yeah, Sam, I'm like, I have said last week that I'm no longer opposing your point of view of like focusing on the super intelligent, and I think that could be one instrument. I think like all of the above approach is what I'm out for. I just don't think is like it's profoundly fundamental profoundly transformative. That said, but I think like I'm no longer like against that. So you can like I think you are holding on to that point of view so strongly that for me to oppose it is like it's a yes it's a yeah I disagree with it, but if you start something like that and you ask for investors, I will support it. I will invest in it. I will invest in any venture that you go for, either in ideas or materially or immaterially things. Okay, so let me just grab my coffee a little bit here. So purpose and meaning. So we know the critical component in Africa that is missing is definitely we're not socially we're not sorry we're not socially economically robustly constructed to be able to carry and then a scale that's required to achieve a broad set of educational outcome that will fundamentally alter the conditions of Africa. We know that. We know that's the case. But short of that, what we need to do is, to me, like my point of view here when it comes to this is like we need to really like nail down why we have education. Why? Not what education, but why. Okay, at the minimum, I think education should say, that at the end of the cycle, the goal is to make a child, a learner, employable. That's the minimum. I think that should be a purpose, at least a minimum purpose. But at the ultimate kind of like at the highest possible way of, or which is the at the high order level of thinking, at the critical level of thinking, the purpose of education should be to humanize and liberate. Okay, so Ezra, can you share the couple of pictures? I think let's do the purpose one. Okay, the purpose picture that I sent you on WhatsApp, and I think that's that part is important because I think it helps us really kind of nail down. I know many of you who are here have somehow looked at Maslow's hierarchy of need, and I'm not trying to say that's the the tell-all ways of being successful and fully actual as human being. No, that's not what the purpose. That's not what it is. But there's some wisdom in there I wanted to share with you. I don't know if it's possible to share. Sorry. I don't know if it's possible to share that. Ezra, if you can share that, that'll be good. Okay. I'm waiting for. So basically, so what I'm trying to share is something I've read here in this book. Okay. New Science of Self-Actualization. Okay, but I don't really, truly like say, oh, this is all there is to it. No, that's not what it is. Like this is not all. So the purpose is not okay, the other one, not the motivation continuum. The other one, if you can. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay. Okay. So basically this one here. Okay. So it's not about this book. We're not doing a book review here. Trust me. I'm not gonna do a book review. It's a good reference point. It's a good way of seeing the world. And essentially what it is about is it really outlines that I think, it's not Maslow hierarchy of need is his contention in the book is misunderstood. It's not hierarchical. He calls it hierarchy of need, but it's not hierarchical. It's more like a sailboat. Okay? It's more like a sailboat. So it has that kind of okay, has that kind of okay, has that kind of sense that it has this yeah. Okay. So it's basically this is so sailboat meaning like a boat on the water. Okay. So these are fundamental things, basic things, and then these are meaning things. Okay. So like these are where we are, looking at directions and purpose, and when we are, but here, basic fundamental things need. So the claim is simple. Okay. Before anybody can pursue self-actualization, there has to be some fundamental basic things. The thing that sits on the water, on the oceans, and on which the ocean of growth, the ocean of success, the ocean of exploration, the ocean of meaning and purpose. The thing that keeps you afloat are basic things. Like you need to have that fundamental need of being able to feed yourself, because that your security, your safety depends on being able to feed yourself. When people are not able to feed themselves, purpose, meaning doesn't really register. And then we need to he talks about self-esteem, connection, and safety. Connection means that like the connection between ourselves, within ourselves, and outwardly. So the fundamental need that a society and a community and an individual whose fundamental needs are not met, they are not going to be in the journey of self-actualization. That's basically the assertion. And to some extent, I agree with that. I think for large parts in Africa, for most people in Africa, fundamental needs are not met. So education becomes kind of like this far away kind of like pursuing of education for the purpose of knowledge. Oh, so I want to know. Like, do you need to go to school to know? Like, it's just such a luxury. Or I want to, learn. I want to know, and I want to learn about things, about myself, about things. Those high order kind of like high level kind of intangibles become out of reach when for most parts of Africa, somewhere around 600 million to 800 million Africans, is like basic safety issues are not met. Basic safety issues. When you say safety, we don't mean just security. Safety meaning just safety that you derive from knowing that you're going to be able to plant something, grow something, harvest something, and then be assured that the year ahead or the months ahead will provide you have some kind of some basic security of nutrition available for yourself and for your family. Like when you are assured of like a sense of self, a sense of awareness, a sense of your place in the community, that when you have those things, then you have a degree of self-esteem. And then so the purpose of education, okay, the purpose of education, that high level education, it becomes almost meaningless. So we have to say, like, what is today in today's Africa, in the conditions, in the context of Africa, the conditions in the context of Africa, what should be the purpose of education? What should we achieve from education? And then what should be the meaning of being educated? What meaning can we derive from it? That, to me, like, in the contextually understanding the Africa condition is so essential for understanding, or for at least deriving the kind of purpose for the education system that we are hoping to achieve in the 21st century. Then it becomes so let's put up the Labawi framework. Okay, let's put up the Labawi framework. Pastor Ezra, thank you. I really appreciate that. I think. Okay, so Sam says, I think that education should revolve around problem solving abilities. How to look at problems, search for what disciplines can solve those problems. I think that's a very good, reasonable kind of really reasonable way of like trying to kind of assign meaning and purpose to education. I think problem solving is one critical component. But I think sometimes it's just the problem with that could create this tunnel vision issue where you're only thinking about problems. So you're only seeking problems and trying to solve problems. Sometimes you're not solving problems. Sometimes you are creating opportunities that didn't exist before. So the problem haven't yet arrived. So that's also part of it. Yeah, there's a way of thinking called first principle. I know. I think, like, like I would like somebody who really has studied. I know Sam doesn't show up on channels live to discuss this, but I would like somebody who has done first principle, studied first principle, to come on the show and explain a little bit and talk about a little bit about that. But I think, to me, like, there's also what's called appreciative inquiry, where you're not only like looking at a problem that exists, but you're looking at opportunities that exist. Open space approach, uncharted approach, where you are charting the uncharted, where you are exploring the unexplored, where you are building on the places and the spaces that have not been yet uncovered yet. So that element of education is also part of it. But I think problem solving part, I like the because I think for the most part is what we deal with. we deal with problems for the most part. But there's also a huge part of our life where it's not about problem solving. So what we have here in the image that you see is one of the ways that we thought that Africa, at least in my work and my last work in education, that educational institutions should be about this. Okay, here is an example where we say the purpose of education is to help somebody become a fully expressed human being. I don't know if you can take out the title, Ezra, if it's possible to take out that as well, if you can see the full picture of these things. Good. I don't know if you can do that. Yes, thank you. So fully human means like a fully expressed human being, and this is the purpose that we set for this. Just drinking my coffee. Sorry. So for this particular institution, like this is like we thought about meaning and purpose, and said this is what the ultimate objective at the end of the outcome we're looking for from an education experience that a child goes through in our school, in our institution, should be to achieve this. But in order to achieve that fully expressed human, we realized there was a need for context. Like, this doesn't happen in isolation. A fully expressed human is not just an isolated individual. It's a connected individual. It's an interrelated individual. Interconnected. You have agency, but there's also community agency. So we're not just tapping into that individual agency. A fully expressed human being, like as this individualist society, in an individualist society, no. A fully expressed human in a non-individualist society is different from a fully expressed human in a very individualistic society. So what is the context within which that child grows up? He or she. What is the context? So in the context of this particular institution, okay, we looked at Ethiopia and Africa. Ethiopia and Africa. So African ontology, and we try to say, so everything that you see there, God, spirit, human, animal, and plants, and phenomena, objects, are this we derive based on our study of African ontology, like from respected academicians who have studied and researched, African history, African religion, African systems, African traditions, dating back hundreds of thousands of years ago, who have studied deeply within the very limited but available resources, the available data, available information. They say these are the 5 things that are important. But human is the reason you see human there. That the heart of it is like human is the conduit through which all these things are expressed. That's where we derive from that. So we learned that in African ontology can be summed up, that we saw human as through which we connected. So the human that is existing right now, you and I, okay, we are conduits through which we connect to our ancestors. Because ancestral connection forms part of the epistemological landscape of learning in Africa. What our ancestors thought, what our ancestors did, what our ancestors believed, what our ancestors decided in peace and war was central to an African human, be it a man or woman. That is central to their being. Whether we are distant from these kind of things or not, that doesn't matter. But it does exist. We take our ancestral condition much more seriously than any other region in the world. So we said, let's attribute that kind of sense of understanding of it. Not just the spirit part, but the God part. God is expressed through the humans. That's the kind of thing that we learned. And then the sense that as humans, we are guardians of humans living right now. We are guardians of the plants and animals and then other phenomena objects. extra phenomenal objects that are visible and invisible. So we learned that. So we wanted to build that kind of contextual framework. And then we said, this is a school, this is an educational school, and then it's an Ethiopian one, has an Ethiopian tinge to it. So we looked at ancient Ethiopian philosophies to really zooming into this. And like way back to the time of Axum. And then we saw that, it's a whole set of layers of it, but name, like what you name. Like when you say something is a tree, there's meaning to it. The sense of authority. Like as a human being, as a tree, there's an authority to it. There's the authority of a tree that has leaves in it is to what? To transform what the energy of the sun and the energy of the earth into something else, into fruits, into more trees, into more seedlings, into more of this. Okay, so there's authority and then also the sense of like wisdom, where part of it is wisdom, like in ancient Ethiopian philosophy. There's a sense that wisdom is when somebody is wise, is considered, that person is wise, a person is considered wise because that person can see the future without necessarily having any evidence of the future. That sense of faith in the future, in the now and in the past, that kind of the ability to transcend visible and invisible, tangible, intangible, the ability to transcend that is considered wisdom. And then there's a whole lot of this. So these are like, we had to translate them from Giz to Amharic, from Amharic to English. These are the best names of it. So the Ethiopian philosophy was supposed to be guiding that school in the context of Africa, ontology, in the context of, so that's context. At the top, this is context, the context of education. Then we say, what is our role as a school? Okay, so in order to achieve that purpose, we organize, the purpose is to help somebody become a fully expressed human being. I mean, whatever purpose, whatever meaning that they represent as human beings, whatever fullness that they should, that represents, whatever fullness represents for that person, for that child, for that learner, we are saying that context, and then the organizational, the institutional values, and the institutional practice. So we formulated this as a way of helping achieve this. Why do I show this to you? I know, like, this is not necessarily something that works everywhere. No, that's not why I'm showing you here. I'm showing you this because what I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to tell you that when you have meaning and purpose assigned, the next thing you ask is, how do we help achieve that meaning? And how do we help achieve the purpose? So you just like setting the meaning and setting purpose is a way of signaling for you to reverse back to a point of origin, to a point where that purpose yet has not been achieved, to a point where that purpose has not been fulfilled yet, and to a point where you can operationalize the means by which you can achieve that purpose. If the purpose of education is for a child to learn, then everything that you do to achieve that is to operationalize that. It's just to learn. So the child will go through the educational life cycle, and all you have achieved at the end of it is learning. If the goal, the purpose of education, and the meaning and the purpose of education is for the person to be employable, and everything that you do to help achieve that will be for that. And so you So it allows you to reverse the process in such a way that you can actually meaningfully affect. And the problem with a lot of vast amount of education system in the world, and in Africa in particular, it doesn't have powerful and poignant and meaningful and an impactful purpose and meaning attached to the education system. Hence, the operationalization of it is very tepid, very disorganized, very disjointed. Hence, the little resource that you have becomes the danger that that harms the outcome you're looking for. So yeah. Okay, like Sam says, one way to look at the first principle is to break down a problem until you can't break it down anymore. That starts solving each broken down problem. Ultimately, you solve the larger problem fully. And I think that's a very good way of, and that's a good summary of what the first principle is. And I appreciate that. So, do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to share? Do you have any kind of, please feel free to come in. So I think I've done about an hour's worth of discussion and talk, and I'm more than happy to dive deeper into some of these things. But feel free to join in, come in, and have you say in the topic at hand. Okay. No one is showing up. Is that what it is? We're waiting, still waiting. Come on, guys. Am I this convincing? Huh? No, it's okay. No, so like yeah, Ezra, just put it up so I can explain. Yeah, definitely, put up that what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can put it up. Yeah. So, Pastor Ezra is just putting up the image. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So why do I have this? Is just to tell you, like, just to point out that it is challenging. So I'm waiting for it. I don't know. I think he's having a little bit of. Okay. Okay. When you minimize it, it doesn't. Yeah. I guess you can't minimize it. Okay. Yeah. So what this image is an image of earlier what I was trying to say. Like, it's an image I captured from reading a book called Transcendence, and it is supposed to be kind of like an updated version of the Maslow's hierarchy of need, but not necessarily truly an update. When you read the book, you realize it's not necessarily a major update, but it's definitely an attempt at that, and it tries to point out, the misconception about the book. Tries to point out the misconception about Maslow's hierarchy of need and the journey to self-actualizations. It also points out, where Maslow got a lot of the ideas from, and all of those things are there. It's not so, it's nothing new. Self-actualization is nothing new. It's not something that was discovered by psychologists in the 19th century or the 20th century. Okay, so but what the goal of me putting this image on this, like sharing this, is to help us understand that the challenge, because education is about growth. Excuse me, education is about growth. It's about learning and growing. The journey of an education is a growth space. But for the most part, and this image is an image of a sailboat. Okay, a sailboat has at the top, you see the thing that propels, gives directions and purpose. So that's why purpose, love, and exploration. These are. But at the bottom, you see, is the thing that helps the sailboat float in the world of life. Okay, so the author is trying to communicate to you that self-actualization journey is more like a sailboat, not hierarchy. A sailboat meaning like out in the ocean, exploring. Okay, exploring and all of that. Thank you, Tanzan. So exploring things and being something and finding something, all of those things. That's what it is. That's what is this image is trying to communicate. But at the bottom of it are the ones that help float. So he puts the terms self-esteem, connection, and safety. And I'm sharing you what I understood from what's it, not necessarily what I agree, but what I understood. But the at the bottom of it is safety. That safety element comes from the notions and a sense of, let's say, security that you derive from the things from meeting your needs. Like one of the things that most African people struggle to meet, the need to feed. Okay, the other one is the need for, like, that safety that comes from security. This, like, insecurities, either like, politically instigated insecurity or otherwise. But the safety issue is the most under-treated ones very often. So what the author is trying to communicate is that if we cannot address those fundamental three things, then the high ones, the purpose, love, and explosions, are endangered. Yeah, it is a boat. It's a sailboat, Margaret. Yeah, it's a sailboat. Yeah. So what the author is saying, that before we pursue self-actualizations of purpose, compassion, and exploration, and being, and all of those things, that exploration cannot take place when the sailboat is not safe. That is the essential. And I think the self-esteem part is about self-worth, a sense of self-worth. Do people have a sense of worth? Do they feel a sense of worth? And that either shakes up the boats, the security of the boats on the ocean of life, or strengthens it. And I think connection, if I'm not wrong, I think, let me just look at something here from the book. connection. It's about belonging. It's about community. So like the sense of community, sense of security, and a sense of worth, those are central. If those things are shaky, if those things are like really shaky and leaky, if the boat is leaky in those aspects of it, leaky, that means you're like have very low self-esteem. That means your sense of worth is so bad. If you don't feel you belong somewhere, you have a belonging, you have a connection, you have a community. And then if you feel like some fundamentals cannot be met, fundamentals like food and physical and spiritual and emotional security cannot be made, then you have leaky boats. So forget about pursuing purpose, forget about love, forget about explorations. The reason I put this image up, I brought this image up not to explain to you what this is, not to promote this book. That's not what I meant. There's a lot of questions about this that you can ask. It's just to give you a sense that in some way, in some fundamental way, there's some truths in the condition and the context of Africa that most Africans don't feel that they're worth something. Most Africans don't feel like they belong in this world because they are made to believe they don't belong in this world. You are black and brown and African. You're constantly made to believe and made to feel you're not part of the world. You're not part of this planet. You don't have a part in it. You don't participate in it. And then for the most part of Africa, you get a sense that basic security that is tied to our food, that is tied to our spirit, that's tied to our emotions. All of those securities are constantly under threat. So the point is that when those things are shaky, it's really hard for a lot of Africans and for a lot of African families to really think about education as having any meaning, having any benefits. That a child should go out there and pursue education because education is about growth. So education is about pursuing some learning for the goal of growing, for the goal of being somebody, for the goal of achieving something. So, and that to me is what is actually centrally lacking. So that's why we have to really reevaluate the actual meaning of education and the purpose of education right now in the context of Africa. Is to say, like, should education, the purpose of education be to provide all the knowledge necessary for communities and families so that they can go out there and provide security for themselves, food security, intellectual security, emotional security. Like, is it like education so that we don't tribalize it, we don't degenerate into tribalism, so that we don't cut through all those things that link us and connects us. Slice through all of that. That's what we do sometimes. So is it about helping people feel like they are actually worth something? So should education be focused on not just this high end, we want to be space going and want to build factories, want to create jobs, want to be entrepreneurs. Meanwhile, for the most part, those things are luxury for most Africans. Hence, education should be focused on deep, like basic and fundamental issues that are underlining the conditions of Africans. And that's why I put this picture up, like so that we can see where we should focus the meaning and the purpose of education. And that's essentially what this is about. It doesn't look like I have a guest today so far. Okay. Do I have any guests? No guests. No guests. I wonder how many people are watching it. Okay. Yeah, about 7 people watching. You sure? Okay. So join if and because I think I've exhausted my topic, and it's now time to explore what we discussed so far, really interrogate them. And okay, Sam is talking about his work. Okay, Betty. Oh, okay, Tazan is here. Thank you, Tazan, for joining. Hey, Tazan, welcome. Good afternoon to you. Do you understand?
Oh, yes, good to be here, Professor Ezra. Good to be here. And this is a wonderful and very important topic that you're talking about, because one thing that we Africans always talk about is the value of education. The first thing you're taught as a child is get your education, get your education, get a job, get your education. So, but we haven't really asked ourselves what kind of education and what we're learning and what is the purpose of it. So I'm so glad you took this time to illuminate us, being the professor of education. And so one thing you asked is this, that should we talk about the more practical aspects of it, which we have been, focusing on, is get your education, get a job, become a lawyer, engineer, or doctor. Those are the only acceptable, professions. And I think that, when you brought up the Maslow's self-actualization, I mean, he didn't come up with it, he just described it. That's one thing also that we have to learn about all these things, that we know a lot of things, but we don't really put it into, codified dogma like Westerners do. We simply practice, we're more of the practice rather than the philosophical aspect of things. So I like that you said that he didn't come up with it. He just described it, and I think what we are missing in our education system is the aspect of purpose. Every child, when they go to school, they always ask, "Why am I learning these things? Why am I learning algebra and agriculture and all these things? What is it going to benefit me in the future?" And I think that that is a question that we should answer to the children. We owe an answer to the children, because if you're teaching somebody something, you should teach them with a purpose. And if it's just to, put knowledge in their heads, which I think sometimes is what makes us, resistant to education, is it's all a form of indoctrination. We're just told what to think and memorize and believe, but we're not told to use it and apply it for our own ends. So I think in a way that we do education a disservice by merely focusing on the practical aspect, the job acquiring skills, instead of talking about education, which, in traditional culture, education was an all-round thing. It was not just for practicality, it was also for making you a better person, full holistically, both mentally, spiritually, psychologically, all of that. It was not just to, to make you money, which I think we have very, very narrowed to our detriment. The purpose of education is not just to help you get a job. It's supposed to make you a better person, both in your character, in your spirit, in your personal life, in everything. So I do agree that we have limited the view of education, and we need to expand it. And I like the chart. I don't know if you can put it up again, the chart with the the African, the Ethiopian concept of it, the whole aspect of it, because we do, look at, oh, there it is, the African ontology. We just look at it as just one thing, get a job. And that's very simplistic and it's not very practical. So the institutional values, I like that, self-examination, that's one thing that we really need, and it's very much lacking in our education system. Our education system, I would summarize it as memorizing, just cramming facts and spitting them out during exam. And that does not allow for a lot of the second one, creativity. It just allows for repetition. And repetition is not creativity. Repetition is just regurgitating what you have learned in class. There's some good aspect to it because you're learning what others have already learned, but you're just repeating. You're not really adding on to the body of knowledge that we have acquired as human beings. So, yes.
Sorry, I have muted myself. Welcome, Mikias. Thank you. I appreciate that, Tanzan. I really appreciate that. I think you hit it in the nail. Like, we are lacking in even in the most basic things. We don't have purpose to it. Even when we say memorization, like, for what? We don't have any meaning or purpose assigned to it. So we just do it. It's just a function.
Yes.
It's like hoping that it achieves something. It's like hoping that it hits a target that you have not defined yet. You're shooting at a target that is not defined. There's no definition of target. There's no. So you have that. Even to me, like I used to say this when I was doing this work in behavior. I mean, even if you cannot achieve an education that's really like robustly like high-ended, like about having a meaningful life, really being fully human, even that level, even if it's not that level, at least even at the lowest level, what is the purpose for it? Even, like when I asked this when I was in Ethiopia, and I used to do these things every time I met somebody who's in education, either in the ministry or some kind of work. I always ask them, what is the purpose of the education system that you have? And they give me this bewildering look, like, oh, it's so obvious, so that people can learn, people can go to school. That's usually the thing, and that is not a purpose.
Right.
That is the process. That's what's happening right now. You're describing what's happening right now. You're not telling me even so. So that kind of failure to really, even at the lowest level, provide that kind of basic kind of, even when you say, or at least tell me so that people can get a job. Then I'll ask you the question, do you think the system that you've put in place will make sure they get a job? That's the next question I'll ask you. If you tell me the purpose is so that people become employable, then I'll ask you the questions. Are people now employable as a result of the education system? And the answer usually is often, no, they're not. Because the purpose is not to create, graduates who can become employable. Okay? Sorry, just Mikias, please go ahead. I have somebody important call to make. Tanzan, please go ahead, okay?
Yeah, sure. Welcome to Mikias.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we were talking about the education implementation. I think, as you guys said, it's more of a memorization process than more of building a full human, I think. So that's, I think, based on only concentrating on the theoretical parts, because that's mainly caused on the how we implement the practical part, because every education is first knowledge, then experience, then it becomes the creating the full meaning of the education we acquired. But when we see to our African way of education, it's mainly concerned on the theoretical part, because in different cases, in the financial scenarios, on the implementation scenarios, we don't have those tools to practice what's taught on the theoretical part. On the second thing that I noticed is we even learn those theoretical parts on the basis of hard understanding, because it's not more of implemented on the place that we live in. If, let's say, as an example, if we take a biology class, has both the theoretical and the practical part. The theory is created from an outside source, far away from our nation and continent. Even after we understand those theoretical parts, we might not have the facility to implement that on our practices, because it's they give you an example of laboratory tools and stuff that you can access easily, especially as a modern day called third world countries. We can't access all those things, so we're left out only with theories. So after the theoretical part, we go against competition against all students in the nation and continent, and then we get few access to those universities and maybe high schools that can acquire those facilities. So that creates an outnumbering educated and uneducated population, in my point of view.
That's so like apt, like, and thank you, Mikasa, for really describing essentially some of the issues I actually dealt with when I was doing the work. And also when you see the picture that you see, there's a part called in the African ontology, there's plant and species, right? And the plant and species part is like and then so in our school at Labawi, what we did was like, okay, why should you learn something in biology, something that is so outside of your listening, when you could learn about talla, or when you can learn about making your injera?
What's talla?
Talla is a type of beer, and it right? Yeah. So, or even medicine, like was it Koso medicine?
Oh, you know what? When you talk about medicine, and sorry to digress, but
yes,
that is one area of education that we have really neglected. There was so much scientific and medicinal knowledge that we had from plants, herbs, curing different diseases, that we are really losing a lot of knowledge in that, in that sector, because I know that we knew how to cure many diseases. We knew how to take care of each other. We knew how to raise children and take care of them, all the childhood diseases and things like that. And we're really losing a lot in that when we give our, faith and all that to modern medicine. But we really had, I know that there was a plant in East Africa where when you had a stomachache, all you had to do is go, chew on it. It was very bitter. It was a very bitter flower. But all you had to do was just chew on it for a little bit, and wham, it disappeared. This knowledge, we're really losing a lot of knowledge that we had, because it's considered, tribal or, traditional and all this stuff. So even in terms of medicine, we should stop looking at education as just, getting a degree. We should learn about, improving your life, healing yourself, being a better human, eating better. So in terms of medicine, I do agree that there's a lot of education and knowledge that we're losing in terms of that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's essentially like, so I don't know if Ezra can still put up the picture that we're looking at, the image that we're looking at. That's the experiment. When we say the context, when we say context in our school system that we were working on, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to kind of like enrich the environment within which that child grows, within that context. In Tanzania, there's going to be an African context, but there's also a Tanzanian context. Like if they are like in the Maasai context within Tanzania, that context is part of the process. So the child that child is a son and a daughter of an African who's probably have ancestors who have worked on with could be ancestral spiritual people or even people who work on phenomena and objects like metalwork to craftsmanship to like clothing to these things. This whole sort of things that we it could be a clergy person, it could be somebody who cares for animals, right? So that context kind of does it within. So our job as an institution is to figure out a way that we can embed those things into the system.
You know what I propose? I propose we scientifize, if that's a word, our traditional knowledge. Yes. Because at this point, we have the knowledge. We have the knowledge of, healing diseases, of, dealing with mental illness and so forth, but we haven't really codified it in a way that will bring respect. It's right now, it's more of a know-how or informal knowledge, like, oh, this plant and so on, but it's not written in a very scientific, highfalutin sounding paper. So yes. What we need to do is to make that local knowledge into a formal and scientific knowledge basis that we can even write like long papers. We need our academics to come and make traditional knowledge into academia, because that's what they did with most of these concepts. They just went in and knew what people had known already, and then they made it into a very scientific sounding thing. So if we can give those scientific sounding, if we can bring respect to our knowledge, I think that's what is lacking. Because most of the time, even if we know something, it's considered just, as they say, old wives' tale. It's just considered something that, these things people just practice this way and that way. We don't really respect our knowledge. But yes. The thing that Europeans really did with the information is that they codified it, and then they made it into a very strict, rigorous code where you had to, go through certain tests, you had to go through peer reviews and so on, so that when you presented it, it was presented as almost fact. It was hypothesis and then fact, and then it was challenged, and then if it worked, then it was considered, part of the general, theories into laws, because everything is a theory until it becomes a law. So what we don't do, we just do it as a practice, but we don't really make it into a law of knowledge. We simply practice what we know.
Tazan, I think, I'm sure, somebody who takes time to study the anthropology, the historical context, I'm sure there were some codification that were there that were decimated, that we don't know about. So we're looking at it from the prism of post-decimation.
Yes.
So there's a lot of missing parts. So we're trying to make joint, put together, and then one of the reasons why we put this system, this learning module in our school, is because of those missing parts, so that we can educate the next generations that will go out to figure out a way to reconnect back to those things that are important. Those things that we missed. So it's not just sporadic. The effort is not sporadic. We're not just focusing on traditional medicine, or we're not just focusing on traditional spiritual systems. We're not just focusing on traditional method of craftsmanship, art, science. We are helping the next generation of the reason we wanted that fully human being expressed come out in this context is that so that they know the purpose for which they are around.
Yes.
They are here to recapture, resuscitate what has been lost, fundamentally lost. Of course, we have always sporadically that exists. This medicine that still exists, this method that still exists, this theory study, but we want the pre-decimation, pre-colonial era, pre-slavery era African context, where much more robust systems that probably have existed for hundreds of thousands of years that we don't know about right now, because we're looking at it through the prism of the foggy lens of colonialism that is standing between us right now and that past. So we can't see it clearly. So we need smart, intelligent people who figure out a way to get there.
Yes.
And that is a lot of work. That's a lot of people who are having to be transformed. And that see themselves as part of Africa. I am an African. I'm a human being, but I have an African, and I have ancestries that I want to recapture and resuscitate and and bring about. And I think that's the crack of it. But that's what we're trying to do with that work that we're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like what Sam just said, that pharmaceutical companies often don't even want to heal their patients. Instead, they want to keep them giving medicine for the rest of their lives. For example, you can cure diabetes by not eating sugar. Yes, indeed. And one thing I would say about African medicine, it was not just about healing the body. That's a simple thing. It was about, most of the time when you go to a person, it was everything in your person. It was the spiritual, the physical, the psychological, everything was involved in a human. And a human being, that makes more sense than just curing the biological. Sometimes there's something they call psychosomatic illnesses, and also something, the placebo effect. The placebo effect has never been, really fully explained, because how can people get better just from feeling that they're taking a medicine when they're not? So that tells you that human beings are more than just biology. It's more than just the body. It's a feeling, it's faith, it's spirituality. It's how somebody feels, on the overall level. It's not just, we're not just machines. A machine, you can fix certain parts and then, everything is okay. But we have souls. I mean, those of us who still believe in it, but we have souls, we have faith, we have spirit, we are more than just our physical human bodies. So I think modern medicine has sort of lost its way in just looking at us as pure machines, instead of looking at us as holistic beings. You can fix your body, but if your soul, your spirit, your mind is not all there, then there's only so much you can fix. You'll fix one thing and then something else will come about. That's why modern medicine is full of side effects. You're curing one thing and then you have 1,000 things that's going to go wrong.
Yes.
So
they call them caregivers, and if you actually look at the word caregivers, it's like they are caring for you while they are figuring out a way to keep you alive long enough for you to say, I'm cured and not cured. This is a chronic disease, whatever. It's caregivers. They're not healers. They don't even call them healers. But even nowadays, in a very in much more serious issues, much more serious diseases like cancer, they are now adding social workers into the mix, because they've come to realize that the network around the persons who's going through some serious medical issues is as critical to the social network, at least. Not the spiritual necessarily, but the social network. So it's a new kind of, so they're always learning after the fact. But, but we have known for centuries before that a person is not only what is tangible, that is what is visible, what you see. A person is more than that. I'm not just this thing that you see contained in this image, but my experience, my sense of my connections, my love and hate, my who I am is not just a body. Who I am is a whole set of it. That's why people can have the same disease and different outcomes. And so education has to be about really getting people to really see that as a human being, you're more than just the thing that I see. You are a sum of, and more than a sum of, all the experiences you've had in your life, the things that you care about and you value, things that are important to you, the connection that you have, the families, the history that you had and the history you're about to make. And then ultimately your soul and your spirit, that helps you connect not just with the people, with the things around you, but with the spiritual realms of your ancestors and your God. So there's a whole set of things that a human being represents, and a human being as a conduit of that. And I think as an African, I feel that truth deeply. It's not that I know it, I feel it. So yeah. Mikias, do you want to add a few things?
You guys have covered most of the things that was on my mind, but in addition, it's like you said, it's human beings are more than just the tangible part. I forgot the term that Tanzan used, but the psychological and mental part is very essential in every aspect, because that's one of the intelligent processing system in the human body. So, and those are created with different understandings to different languages. So, as a barrier, as I see it, one is language, because if I have something to share with you, as you said, a life experience, and if I can't use if I don't have the knowledge about that language, I can't express it to you. So that leaves a barrier to create an image in your brain. That's what they used at the back in the days. The first thing that slavery was implemented on was siding people from books and knowledge. That's what the first thing that they did before they physically put us into slavery. The first thing was detach us from our personal knowledge and to their knowledge too. Because if we knew everything about our colonizers, we would have understand at the early stage that they were colonizers. But they didn't give us full information. At the same time, they detached us from our education. So that's the point I want to add on that.
Absolutely. And I do agree. And when it comes to education also, I think you see the difference between Africans and the Westerners is Westerners tend to compartmentalize. They tend to break things up in different things. I call it, atomization. Everything is in different stages: business, health, psychological. Everything is in its own place. That's why you have psychiatrists, doctors, and so on. So the doctors don't feel like they should step on the toes of the psychologists, and so on. Psychologists don't feel that they have a reason to speak on the medical aspect of it, but we looked at as human being as a whole individual. So everything that affects one person affects it in everything. And I think we have really limited ourselves by looking at it as education as just a way of employment. I think that's one of the greatest deficits we have in African education, because when you go to school, even from a child, what are you told? Go to school, get a job. Go to school, get a job. That's all it is. It's not go to school, build your community or build your character or become a more social person. It's just for one thing only. It's just to get a job. And that's a very limiting way of looking at education. Our traditional way of looking at education was not just learn. It's not just knowledge, it's also wisdom. That's something that we have also neglected. We have only looked at the knowledge, like the knowledge is supposed to help you make a living, but the wisdom part of it we have just neglected. We don't really pay attention to that aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it, the spiritual aspect of it. So we have cut ourselves short by just looking at education as just a means for making money instead of a way of improving yourself and your community as a whole. So one thing that we should maybe look towards is transforming our education, not just in terms of economic structure, but in terms of social advantage, social promotion. So you don't just go to school to help yourself, and that's very individualistic. Oh, you just go get a job. No, you're supposed to have, because for us, when we're taught in traditional society, you're supposed to learn things so that you not only improve yourself, but you improve your family, your community, you bring things back to your people. So we have become very selfish in that way, that education is just supposed to be about a monetary transactional basis instead of a more communal aspect of it. So yeah, I say that we need to expand the role of education to not just economics, but more wholesome well-being of the community and individual self-knowledge.
I think that to me, Tanzan, I think that reflects more of the true nature of our community. That like true like what do like it's a representation. It's a more like a reflection. It reflects more the true nature of the society, not what we wish society is or should be or what we imagine it to be, more like what it is. For the most part, in African context, and then I mentioned this, and then I think you also mentioned this before. like, you know, for the most part, governments don't exist in Africa. Like for most people.
You said governments don't exist?
No, it doesn't exist in them. None that the services that they expect from government doesn't exist, right? Like, you know, when it comes to their food, government is not there permanent. Like the government, I mean, like the institutional governance that as we expect them to be, for the most part, Africans are in communities where they support each other, where they are, you know, if they need to finance something, you have a community that to look for. If they need to grow something, they have a community to look into. For the most part of Africans, the communal living in community, in a community of support among yourself, among neighbors, where the construct of the community and the construct of the individual very highly interrelated, so highly interrelated. Whether it's effective, that's something else, you know.
Yes.
So somebody dies, and in the process of taking care of the person's burial, it's a community affair. Somebody gets married, right? It's a community affair, and those are
absolutely.
Well, does the government exist in that space? No. Do the insurance companies exist? No. Do the banks No.
No.
No. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, like, education that is more reflective of that. That's what you're saying. Yeah? That's what I'm getting from you. Like, it's more reflective of the actual true nature of Africans, and that true nature of African is built because of it's like that because that's how we aspire. We aspire to be part of a community where we want to take part in being, like, in helping, and like in everybody's, you know, case. You know, everybody's in everybody's case. Like, you know, and no child does anything without, you know, the neighbor, you know, rattling out. You know, I saw your kid over there doing this. So there's that communal nature of it. I think it's there. It just education need to and should reflect that. And the more reflect that, the more it is powerful. And I think it's like, I think Mikas was also pointing out, you know, that I think if you want to go back to our history, we have to go back to ourselves. So, like, I think that's one of my hypotheses, where yes, we can't access some of the history that happened because of the distortion, but we can access ourselves.
Yes. And
a lot of the history is already embedded in our system. Not in a detailed written way, but it's already embedded in our system. That means that there's certain things in our character and our ethos and our way of being as Africans that we are because of our history. But we don't know is the linkage between that and the history because we don't have evidence of that. But we are. So we're more communal. We like community more. We like to engage more. We like to form meaningful relationship with other people, not just transactional relationship, because this is in our DNA. So if I study my DNA closer, like the way I am closer, the more I study, the more I understand myself, the more I become an African. The more I connect with my history, even though I'm disconnected from my history. And even, I mean, yesterday you had a friend who talked about, like, some of the things they do as African Americans who are totally disconnected from their ancestors, right? But somehow, some way, certain things could not be disconnected from them. And that's amazing. That's, to me, that's what education that allows people to really connect with themselves and their community. You know?
Yes.
Before I let you guys in, I want to say a few things. I want to just read some of the comments. I know Sam has been very productive in this comment space.
As always, and shout out to Sam and Marie Antoinette. You guys are just the best.
Yes, good soldiers. These are the generals on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the lieutenants on the ground just taking care of business for us. So he said, like Sam says, 25% of prescriptions are placebo. Yes, because we know that, you know, like everybody knows psychology.
Let me just you know. Yes. Even that aspect of that prescriptions are placebo, the whole idea of placebo just gives you the psychological aspect of medicine, that medicine is not just biology, it's also very psychological, that people thoughts and, you know, attitudes about, you know, even medicine also affects the way, you know, the treatment goes, you know, because placebos is just psychological. It's not really scientific. It's just a human thing, and people will believe that, you know, if something can heal them, it will. And that's also part of what we believed in, you know, the whole, you know, I know it's considered superstitious and voodoo and all that, you know, stuff, but at the same time, when people really believed hard enough in something, it actually created results, you know. So placebos to me are like a throwback of what we believed as Africans, that, you know, your belief also has an effect on the treatment. So yeah,
I know we know about attitude, not just in medicine. Like your attitude about yourself, your attitude about your space, your environment, your attitude about your challenges and your opportunities makes a difference.
Yes,
like how,
it does.
because consciousness and self-consciousness is a thing that exists. Even if you're not a spiritual person, just your neurons, your just the way your brain is wired itself alone, by itself alone, has a fundamental impact and power in it. So that is important. I wanted to say, and Betty Alleling, like
yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that either. I hope you'd get down on the panel and tell us.
Betty Alleling is yeah, thank you so much for your comments. And I know you know about my school, and you know, like you said, oh, I should invite next time. I should invite somebody from my school. And today I have one who just joined us. I think Jonas just joined us from. He's one of my former students. I still work with. He's currently at Columbia University, freshman at Columbia University on a full scholarship. And I appreciate you joining us, Jonas. Mondatezi, as always, your presence is, you know, it's an incredible one. So Mikias knows about Lebawi. Last time we were talking about it, right? Last time. So you know a little bit about Lebawi. And so so Jonas is one of those students who went through Lebawi, who experienced what we did up close. You know, and it's all, so he knows the perfection and the imperfections. You know, I want to tell you about how perfect it is, but he's going to be the one who's going to verify the imperfection as well. So Jonas, welcome to,
Okay.
we're talking about education. Thank you, Jonas. I really appreciate you. So welcome. And so we're talking about meaning and purpose of education. And we're talking about how it is. And I tried to share with the team here at least the Lebawi framework that we were using, experimenting on, not in all, you know all the imperfections, you know, because as a student you were there, so you experience it deeply. But we're looking at like in terms of the broader sense of what is meaning, what is the meaning, what is the purpose of education should be. And if you have thoughts on that, and then if you want to kind of within your own personal experience on it, and to help us, you know, like verify how much of me is a fraud and how much of me is true. Okay, so since you have a much more personal and up close experience on the work that I've done, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So Lebawi really started with the idea that people come already full. I think it arises from the spiritual sense that people are already created full, you know. So the whole meaning of education, the whole purpose of education is it's a pathway, it's a process that helps you realize what you have inside, how much you were created with, how much you already had. It's not the dumping of information and then, you know, you repeating information. No, that's not education. It's more of like supposed to challenge you and pressurize you to sort of realize what you could be, what there's inside that hasn't been revealed yet, that is yet to be revealed, that is yet to come. So at the core, that's one of the major concepts. Another major concept that I experienced at Lebawi is locally robust, globally connected education. That basically means, you know, for example, in Africa, most education does not exactly represent African thoughts, African philosophies. It's not connected I believe it has lost connection with African ontology. That sense of being African, you know what I mean? So what Labawi tried to do, it was basically bring back that sense of Africanness, Africainess in the Amharic sense, back into education. So, um, like most of my experiences were filled with me being given, like most of the educational techniques I would say was mostly filled with me being given responsibility and me figuring out that I can actually handle that responsibility, you know, like me being surprised by myself. Um, and then we followed the normal Ethiopian curriculum because we had to, but then we enhanced it with like multiple things such as for example the sports um, like the sport period that we have is very different. Tuesdays after the break, after lunchtime, it's all dedicated to sports. So that gives you like enough time to really engage in physical activities, um, you know, like explore different physical activity opportunities for you, and then sort of realize whether your talent lies in there or not. Um, on Thursdays, we would usually have, oh, we actually had PE on Thursdays. On Tuesdays, we would actually have club time where we had like, you know, like, where we were given an opportunity to get into like many clubs, um, you know, like try things out, see where our interest lies, explore ourselves. And then one of my very favorite things about Labawi is what we had on Fridays. That is the community meeting. We would usually gather in the morning and, um, you know, give thanks to each other, acknowledge what we've done to each other in the whole week, and then sort of discuss like where we see the next week going. It was very interesting. So I think Labawi has added so much to me. Um, it has been a lot, and over the summers I got to work with Ezra as a 10th grader. That was like some few years back. And then I got to work in his office as his personal assistant because Labawi would usually give us internships in the school. Oh, that really helped and that really added um, to our experiences as people, you know, like professionally. And yeah, um, Ezra has been. So now I'm bringing the focus back to you as opposed to the school. And when I met Ezra and Labawi, like mostly our interactions will be filled with like continuous discussions, discourses on like different philosophical, spiritual, um, scientific concepts. So I guess that was the way of educating for Ezra. Um, that's discussion, you know, like he would engage you in discussion for like a few hours, and you know, you get like a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts being sparked in you. You go back to your house, you reflect upon it. So I would say Ezra followed the system of education that Paulo Freire suggested, which was action and reflection. Um, you would act together, you would engage in discourse together, and then you go back, reflect. You meet him the next day. Um, here's another discussion, and then you meet him after a month. There will be another discussion, and somehow you'll realize that you're growing as a person, you're changing as a person. Um, and then as the dean of school, I know he contributed so much to designing the curriculum, like the schedules, and like for me personally, working with them over the summer has been very phenomenal. Um, it really has like impacted the way I see the world and really contributed like significantly to my growth. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a lot of praise coming from you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I think to me, to me, like what people need to understand is like I think the one thing that you just said, Jonas, which is very important, like you are already made. We're not making you in school. You come into school already made. You just haven't realized exactly what that making is. You haven't yet figured out how to emerge and then really show exactly that's so the full expression is what the expression of that which you are is what you're looking schools to help you achieve that. And I think the process that we put in there in the school is it's not just the context. Like you are part of Africa, you are part of Ethiopia, you are part of Africa, but there's a process through which you can figure yourself out of it in that, and then be in that space. So, like this is what's called explore, discover, and be. Explore, discover, and be is a constant engagement with the self, but in the context of interconnectedness. You're not isolated agency. You're interconnected agency. So there's a community agency. There's an individual agency. There's a connection between those things. So schools, educations can't actually successfully achieve that. You can help people be their full potential self, but it needs that kind of rigor, that kind of like groundedness, that kind of effort, intentionality in the way you design everything. Like in our school, we design every interaction as much as we can. Almost every possible interaction was thought of as deeply as possible. Whether it's just a small meeting that we're going to have every Friday, or whether it's just going to be an entire summer of like from African studies to theory of knowledge to experiential learning to or a math class somewhere, everything has to be thought about, interrogate, or whether it's course integration, we call course integration, which is like learn everything from every possible angles to leadership platform, everything. So then the operationalization becomes, I don't know, hopefully Betty, who asked for this, has had her answers. Betty, thank you so much for suggesting this. Hey, Mondotezi, you have anything to add?
Yeah. I'm actually really learning a lot of. Maybe I have a question.
Wow, finally he speaks. Go ahead, Mondotezi.
Yeah. I have to maybe offer my apologies to my sister Tanzan. I think yesterday.
He called in and he forgot to talk.
Yeah. Sorry for that. But today, let me contribute. Let me ask a question first. I think I'm a bit behind when because my question is something you just talked about before.
Yeah.
About education and education in Africa, and I was going to contribute that perhaps maybe we need to differentiate between education and training, because I feel like in Africa a lot of people are getting trained but they're not getting educated. If you could understand the difference.
I think. Hey, Jonas, do you want to take a stab at that? If you want to take a stab at it, I'll let you. Since you.
Of course. Yeah, I definitely think a lot of Africans are getting what's called training, which basically is you get like a lot of information you repeat after, and then you basically serve like what you've been told. Yeah, that's what's happening. That's training. When it comes to education is supposed to sort of give you a sense of existence, a sense of, oh, this is what I am, like this is what being an African means, and then to sort of make sense of like your past, your present, and then sort of design where you want to go in the future. That's what education is. You're supposed to be given the techniques, the tools for critical thinking, not from a single source that says, oh, this is what is right and this is what's wrong, but from a perspective which is this is what's yours. If that makes sense. So in Africa, if you notice, African thoughts, African concepts, African ideologies are usually forgotten. In African schools, you wouldn't really get African philosophies being represented, you know, and that's very disheartening to see. So what's going on? You're getting this hardcore skills, but then you don't know where to apply them. You just go out, you just look for a job. You might not find a job because employment rate is really low. And so like life goes on. You're not given the tools to really understand and pinpoint what African problems are, and what you can do to contribute to solving them. So I would definitely agree in saying that it's not education going on in Africa, but it's more of training. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if I could also add that we are not also as Africans. I don't know if this is purposeful or intentional, but yeah, even when it comes to the students in Africa, especially when it comes to the training and not education, we're not really encouraged to ask why. I think that's a very interesting question that we're not really encouraged to ask. I feel like a lot of Africans, yes, you probably trained in this field or something like that, but we find that, well, I think what they call half-baked, like you're really just, as my brother here has spoken, you're really just regurgitating what you were told, and you're not even allowed to ask why. No, even all over from all levels of education. I don't know why the question why is really discouraged. So I don't know if that is an intentional part of African education, or it is that we are unintentionally, what is it, suppressing that specific exploration, because even when you look at a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of issue, like when it comes to anthropology, where there is a lot of history in Africa, but I don't see a lot of African anthropologists going out all of the way and just educating the masses, like, hey, this is what happened over here, this was what happened. I feel like sometimes a lot of these anthropologists are not even Europeans or outside telling us, oh, they've discovered who the oldest bodies in Africa, or they've discovered this type of culture that used to happen here. So I feel it's just a very huge gap I see, that nobody's asking why. So I feel like even just you can just see in this field of anthropology, it's like, hey, these guys are not asking why. They are trained anthropologists, but they're not educated anthropologists. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge, massive part of it. I think, to me, at the beginning of the show, this is what I said. Okay, huge part of African problem right now, as is the way it is. Huge part of it is what you see, which is the lack of resource, the lack of it's not well resourced, be it materially or otherwise. It's not well resourced policy wise. It's not well resourced in terms of all sort of the infrastructure and the architecture of education system. Is very as is bad. But the other layer of it is the absence of meaning, the absence of purpose. And because it doesn't have any purpose, any meaning, people asking question, why am I studying this? Because there's no answer to it, nobody's going to entertain it. It's a nuisance. For practitioners of the education, it's a nuisance. From the ministry level to the lowest level of apparatus of administration of education, is because education is devoid of truly profoundly determinative purpose, like purpose that has power and meaning and impact. Because it lacks that, any venturing into that space is just going to be, I know I sound a little bit of an academic exercise when I tell you this, but my experience is this, it's it's a nuisance for a lot of people in there. Like, just learn the shit. Just learn the thing and move on. That's it. Nobody really wants you to explore. Nobody really wants you to interrogate. Nobody wants you to be intentional about learning. That means I am learning something for this purpose. And then because I'm learning this for this purpose, this is all the things I need to do to get it done, to get as much of it as possible. So I think that the essence of the problem lies in the lack of meaning, because education has no meaning as the way it is right now, has no meaning, because, like, I think you put it nicely, education in name only, but in practice is training. It's training you to perform certain things. It's like literally training this pencil to write, nothing more. It's taking the essence of a humanity and then dismantling it to a level where it has no function or no value in it. I mean, that's really what is like really profoundly bad. I mean, like I can give you one example. Like, I think it was just a quick example. I think sometimes in the late 2000s, the Ethiopian government realized, or at least they claim to have realized, that we're not training enough people who are engineering background. Engineering or some kind of technical background. We're not trained. They just realized. Out of the blue, some kind of like, some kind of revelation, spiritual revelation, I don't know what it is. But they realized that. And overnight, there was a new policy. Overnight, I don't say like literally overnight, but so instantaneously. There was no, interrogation of the issue. Overnight, quickly said, you know what? All like tertiary institutions are going to focus on training 70% of their students to be engineers and 30% of them to be non-engineering background, like economics and history and sociology and all of the other things. That was the policy that came out. And then that's somewhere around early 2000s to probably around 2007, 2010, around that time. That was the thing. In 2020, okay, there's a lot of people who have graduated with a lot of degrees, with engineering background. But Ethiopia's economic condition hasn't fundamentally altered enough for that chemical engineer to get a job in a chemical industry, in a cluster of chemical industries. Literally, like a chemical engineer, the most they can get is become the chief engineer or assistant engineer in some kind of, like, say, foam factory somewhere. And that's it. Those companies, those factories can hire one or two of them, nothing more than them. Or electrical engineer, the most they can get out of it. A lot of the times they go out and then go into piloting, and Ethiopian Airlines is the biggest employer of those guys. Maybe telecom, and maybe the electric corporations. But there isn't much for engineers there. There's a lot for technicians with vocational training. There's a lot of job for those, but not much for those engineers who will be at system level operators. So you had a huge volume of people with huge high number of, like, education in mechanical, electrical, engineering, civil, all of this, and having to go out there and be underemployed. They used to do cobblestone, like road, like things that are like well below the educational qualifications. Guess what happened to the other 30%? The other 30% of the educated were business and economics. 20 years later, in Ethiopia, the economy has become even more service-oriented. In 2010, it was around probably 50, maybe 55% of the economy was service. Today, probably close to 70% of the Ethiopia's GDP is service. That essentially means that if you have an accounting background, marketing background, or some kind of economics background, some sociology background, your chances of getting a job is much higher, because the policy that was instituted then to achieve a much more advanced, like, oh, we need to be more advanced, technically more advanced, that was 70-30 policy. Essentially what it is it really lowered the volume of people who graduate from business and economics background with degree. Then you don't have a lot of competitions. And guess what happened over the past 10 years, since 2010? Like, the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia had this strategy of covering every warada in Ethiopia with a bank. Every time they open a bank, there's a...
I'm sorry, what do they have to covering up?
Covering the entire warada. Warada means counties. And there are over close to 2,000 counties. And they wanted to open a branch in every county. And then every time they open a branch, who job announcements are coming up? Do you think they're coming up with engineer background? No. Looking for graduates in business background. Guess what? That policy was designed for the purpose of, resolving the shortage of engineering backgrounds, right? That was okay. But what it is it created surplus of engineers and technical backgrounds, and a shortage of people with the other type of education. Hence, the people who have better social mobility, economic mobility, and all type of mobility that you can think about are people who graduate with a business background, with economics background, with marketing background. Okay? And then if you are somebody who's in the field of technical stuff, you are more likely to get a job with vocational training than getting with engineering degree. If the government of Ethiopia wants to spread out and then get electrification across the country, it doesn't need a lot of engineers to do it. It just needs a lot of technicians, electrical technicians. Okay. So sorry guys, I have my roommates about to make noise, so I'll let you guys. Tanzan, go ahead and speak, okay? It's gonna be noisy. So
that's a very interesting aspect, because we often focus on the highest level of education, like you're supposed to be, just the top part, of everything, but we don't realize that what we need is the people who can actually fix practical problems, and they don't necessarily need to be, high level, engineers or so on. Sometimes a mechanic can do what an engineer might just theoretically do, because the problem, not the problem, but the issue with engineers and the high level scientists is they're more theoretical. They look at things from a very, they look at things from up above, but the mechanic or somebody who's hands-on, he looks at things from what he's seeing right now. So a mechanic will be able to fix your problem, your car problems, but an engineer will just tell you what's wrong with it. Your car is lacking, the fluid mechanics, dynamics of this and that and so on. But a mechanic, he might not understand the whole theoretical, theory behind it, but he will be able to fix your car and move it, keep it running. So who do you need at that time? Do you need a mechanic or do you need an engineer? So I think in Africa, maybe we do need more engineers than mechanics. No, the other way around. We do need more mechanics. Yes.
So we need. In 2013, I wrote a publication, and then for that publication, I had to do a little bit of research. I found out companies in Africa were short of by 60%. They had 60% of the jobs that were technical required only vocational training.
Wow.
60%. That was 2013. 60%, and then these are hundreds, thousands of jobs that they have a hard time filling in. And then, those jobs that are open and available, it could be a driver, it could be a mechanic, it could be an electrician, it could be a plumber, it could be all of these things and everything in between from different kind of craft. It could be a lab assistant, it could be a pharmacist, a clinical pharmacist. All of these things required only vocational training, nothing more. Not that high level, university level educations. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this is already for the most part, African education system is disjointed. It's even when it appeared to be, oh my God, that was an incredible, brilliant those. Oh, we need more
Yes.
engineers, right?
Yes.
But you realize it came from the realization of another failed policy. Let me give you an idea. In 2020, what is, like Ethiopia is an example for me, not to focus on my country background, just because I can rely on the data, not to dismiss any other data. I can rely on data because I've had experience, not to make Ethiopia any grand, but I'm telling you the problems, not even the glorious part. Ethiopia's problem in 2020 is that has 10 plus industrial parks. Once open, becomes a textile manufacturing, blah, blah, blah. But it does not have the kind of, it's companies come in rushing, thinking, oh, labor is cheap. What they realize, labor is not as productive. What they realize, businesses who operate textile manufacturing or whatever low skilled and low intensity manufacturing, what they tell you is that like they would rather pay more money to get more productivity than pay less money and less productivity. Productivity is the thing about it. So what happens is that
interesting to know.
So what happens is that the Ethiopian education system was designed after the fact. So when they designed the education system was 1991, and they were thinking about like all the political things that they need to resolve. So they designed an education system to resolve an already past, something that has happened. So the education system was designed to resolve that political past, not economic past, not technical past, or a notion of what was bad in the past. That was designed. But that's 1991. But by 2015, they were just realizing, oh, the world is manufacturing. Vietnam just joined and they're making, shitload of money. Manufacturing, like China, like Korea. They started saying to themselves, oh, now we can access, some kind of financing to build this industrial park. And they went and got $1 billion+ to build those industrial parks. And then by 2018, they were operating at less than 25% capacity, investing hundreds of millions of dollars, opening up these industries, but operating at such a low capacity. And then we asked the question, why? And just said, oh, labor is not productive, or training these people, it requires a lot of problem. Training the people who were supposed to be working, because like if you had thought about in 1991, by 2015, as if education thinking, policy thinking was forward thinking, it's like by 2015 we want to be industrialized. Okay, we want to be industrial. We want to at least enter light industry. Then you put the education system that trains for that. But instead, what they did in 1991 is train an education system that trained the bad things out of us from the past, instead of thinking ahead. And then 2015 arrives, and they realize, oh, the world is about to industrialize, and then they want to change the policy. But the policy that you change in 2015 is not going to be effective until 2025. The policy you change in 2010, say 70-30, is not going to it's not going to have impact until another 10 years at least. So with the problem that we have in the Ethiopian education system, I can tell you that education is no forward thinking. It doesn't think ahead. So the system doesn't think ahead. It's just whatever is pressing right now is what they do. And then if the British, come with $100 million of aid, and they say, oh, we want to help you with your education system, and then whatever thing they would tell them, oh, your education system should be about, like businesses, and then the policy will come up overnight, and then, oh, now we have to this policy now, and then the Germans will come in and say, no, your education should be vocational. Vocational is more important, woodworkers, and then they give you 20 million or 30 million, and then overnight, oh, let's be vocational. And then, the Koreans will come and say, no, your education should be manufacturing. And then, overnight it become something else. Just that.
Professor Ezra, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that we should focus on more of the traditional aspects of our education, or should we embrace the new education, modern education system in terms of technology and digitalizing and all that? And by traditional, I mean, farming, taking care of the nature, really making our environment, suitable for our needs versus adapting to the new, modern environment.
I think this is an incredible question, and I have a lot of answers to this. But I'll let Montezi and Jonas respond first. Whoever one is ready, please feel free to respond to that, because should we focus on modern methods, modern technologies, and focus on modern methods, modern processes, or should we focus on traditional methods, or is there a third way? Is there a third method? So feel free to guys to chip in your thoughts on this, and I have some few thoughts myself on this.
Okay, let me see if I can try to answer this question. I think when it comes to maybe development economics, I've forgotten the name of the guy, but the theory starts that agricultural is usually the backbone. I think for every developing economy, usually you have to start with agriculture. Then slowly, as you specialize from there, as the labor specializes, something about movement of labor, and as it specializes, then maybe you move from other sectors. But usually the backbone is usually agriculture. So yeah, there is that argument, but there's also the argument of being on the cutting edge. That I think even Dr. K once put it here that if we need to be on the cutting edge, or we'll always be playing catch up. We need to be also innovation, because when it comes to maybe agriculture, okay, when it comes to agriculture, unless we are discovering something new, which obviously there is still space for that. There's always space for discovering something new. But since we're already in a world where the technology has reached high levels, so what I'll probably say is that when we comes to education, I think I'll go back to what I was saying about training and education. And I was going to actually disagree with also what you're talking about. Maybe I don't think there is too much engineers. I don't think there is too much of any profession. I don't even think that there are some courses or some courses that are better than others or are more preferred than others. I feel like no knowledge is wasted. That every profession is important, and it goes back to what you said, that the people who are doing it, are they doing it for for knowledge, or are they doing it with passion? Because even I feel like even in a sociologist, that's like a very important when you're planning a city. When I don't care how good you are an engineer, because I don't care how good you with that. You will always need a sociologist, because sometimes when you put even in here, let me give an example in Kenya, that some guys, they put a flyover where guys cross the road by going on top, but people don't use it. And the engineer is angry that why are
No,
people
they
not
don't,
using it?
and they actually risk their lives trying to cross the
Yeah,
road.
you see, but a sociologist will have told you directly, oh, people are not going to use that because this, and this. You probably need to put it over here or something. So you see, there is no insignificant profession. As long as somebody who's doing it knows why they're doing it, they probably can make, they probably can make a great contribution to the economy or to the society just with that thing they know. So to me, I feel like people should do what they want, but when it comes to maybe now the training part, that now you're told that, because I don't even I think even that's part of the problem, where we look down on, we have a hierarchy of professions. I think even that is a problem in Africa, that because now you feel like you can't hire a sociologist in your company, you don't see the importance, but you still continue to, you don't see how important that person can be, or you don't see that profession as important, or not even a sociologist. There's just so many professions that you do not see as important, but probably they are. They probably have a great contribution. If you just had to get over this mentality of hierarchy of professions, that this profession is more, probably way better than this one, because even as you say, nobody in Ethiopia, where you told me the 70-30, that is a form of hierarchy. They thought, oh, engineers are much more important than these other guys. Turns out that these other guys have a huge contribution to the economy. Probably more right now in the service industry, they are much more. You see, so tomorrow you never know who. You can't really predict who is going to be more important. So you probably need to have these guys. Just guys do what they're good at, and they'll probably have a huge contribution to society. So even a good farmer, you don't look down on this guy or say he's a farmer. Probably he needs to be educated agriculture, because I did something the other day talking about technology in agriculture. It was a very interesting thing that the farmers need to be educated in irrigation technology, irrigation cycles, things like that. Just there's also geologists that can be very important when it comes to agriculture. You see, causes it's all professions that it doesn't, like, my point is just no knowledge is wasted. That is just really my point, that no knowledge is wasted. As long as people are getting knowledge the way, instead of training, that they can use it even in creative ways also, which is also very important, that you don't have to really have a job title to be this is what I do. You can still use what your knowledge in other ways, Yeah, basically that's my point.
Thank you, Madasese. Jonas, before you go, you want to tackle a little bit of the question, and then you can, and I'll let you go.
Of course. So one of the things I'm thinking is, do we need, like, for the question that do we need more people working on current technologies, or like do we want to do a bit of the what's been passed on, what we've missed out on, and then sort of get here. I think one thing we need to understand is, like, the other parts of the world are not going to sit and wait for us. So if we're going to play the game of catching up, that's never going to succeed. We're never going to succeed in catching up because no one is waiting, And you would, like, for Africa to be able to catch up with the rest of the world's technologies and like developments, even infrastructurally and like in other aspects, what we would need is a very, like, a highly accelerated means of development and digitalization. So I don't think we're at a position to be like, let's look back, let's sort of try to figure out what we've missed out on, and then let's see if we can catch up. I think what we should do is we should have people, once we figure out our educational challenges, we should prepare people for now and the future, for the future even more, because, like, at this point, at the present moment, we're still behind. We're still chasing. So we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to train people to be like really equipped with the necessary tools and skill sets for the future, so that like, we can just hop in. I think
he's muted. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had a phone call. Sorry. Yeah. So we also need to have like our African sense of development. Like, if a phone was invented in Africa for the first time, what would it look like? Would it still have this shape, these features, these colors? Probably not. So what's the African way of development? What's the African sense of technology? So, like, I think we need to get into, I think we need to invest highly in, our universities. Like, we need to get started with the research. Like, we need to We need to have like all these things that do require a huge amount of resources, and it seems to me like it's a bit of a challenge to get there. But I don't think we can afford to look back and say, let's do what we haven't done in the past, and try to do what we can do today. You know what I mean?
I think one thing I'll add before you go to Jonas, one thing I'll add to that is that, like, sometimes what are we catching up to? We are catching up to a world where, the way they've built the world as is right now is climate disaster ahead of us. The world they built right now is more inequity, like economic inequity, and more mental and spiritual and really illness that is plaguing these so-called developed countries. I mean, is that the development model they're following, be it Chinese, Japanese, Russian, or European, or American? Is it really truly one to emulate? Should we decimate our equatorial forests completely so that it becomes a farmland, because potentially it's a great farmland? Or should we think about completely differently in terms of the way we think about farming? Like, we are small-scale farming. Should we think about how do we optimize that in such a way that it's interlinked and interconnected, but without having to becoming too mechanized and too engineered as a society? It's like there's a lot of new imagination and new thinking that we need to bring in. But in addition to that, what I would add to what you just said, like, build for the future. So the future, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, the child that's going to school today, 20 years from now, what are they going to do in Africa? It's almost double the population.
Yeah.
Double the number of people who you need to feed, double the number of people that you need to close, and then keep and protect and save. We have everything that we have right now. Every problem that we're dealing with right now will be double in the next 20, 30, 50 years. And then the same thing, the world is going to be less breathable. It's going to be more erratic, more conflict in the world than ever before. So all of these things are ahead of us. So designing for the future, when we say designing for the future, preparing for the future, part of that future is Africa. So the world is in kind of like more like in peril. How does Africa come in to save it, actually? So that kind of sense that Africa is the only region that's going to be responsible for bringing back the kind of world order that is much more peaceful, much more reasonable, much more grounded, much more human, and much more humane. And so I wanted to add that, a little bit of that. And if you want to add a few things to that before you go, and then I'll let you do that.
I think the African philosophy at its core is nature friendly. We do realize that we're dependent on nature. And I think that's what misses in most of developments in other parts of the world. Like, people at some point sort of think, like, maybe we're in control, so then I can destroy this species completely, and then use whatever land for my industries, and that would be okay. That's not going to affect me. So this thinking, this mindset has been like, it's been detrimental in a lot of places, as we can see where the world is headed, like a lot of wildfires rising recently, aggressive climates and stuff like that. So we need to preserve that African philosophy. That's why we need an African education, an African sense of development, that is more inclined towards this core philosophy of being friendly to the world, to nature. And then when it comes to technology, I think there are brilliant minds in Africa. In regards to population, the population could also mean, now we're at like a twin road, crossroad is what it's called here, where one way will take us to, like, we keep doing what we've been doing the whole time, and we're gonna have double the population to feed, double the population to clothe, or it could also mean we're gonna have double the population that could serve, that could be working, that could be programming, that could be like starting businesses and like having conversations like this all the time, adding to the artistic value of the continent and everything like that. So like, it's time that we reconsider our approaches, that we reconsider what like the way we've been approaching all our issues, and then sort of make our choices.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Jonas. That's an incredible point. I mean, we should be inspired by the possibility of the future, not be burdened by it. And I think that's an important point I want to stress as one point that you make. I think that's an opportunity that we have. That's the topic of the segment is titled Education in the 21st Century. And it's not saying education in the 19th century, but education in the 21st century. And then particularly for Africa. And it should be about inspired, it should be about contextual, respectful, the values, the essence and the meaning of being an African. And then it needs to bring that to the table, it needs to make that mainstream thinking. And I really appreciate the fact that you're here as not just as my former students, but somebody of your own, with your own, passion, with your own pursuits, with your own things that you're achieving and working on. I really appreciate that. Hope you come back again. Hope to see you again. Okay, thank you so much, Jonas.
Thank you so much, Ezra.
If I also could add to...
Okay, before you do that, I just want to say, somebody has given me a couple of times hi, and I want to say Matiti Bob. Thank you for Salam, Professor. I don't know who that person is, but they've said a couple of times hi. I wanted to say that hi to them. GB, thank you so much for the kind of contribution you make. Johnny Johnson, thank you for the contribution you're making in the comment sections. Engaging the comments. The comment section is probably more lit than the live sessions, and that's a good thing actually. So it was much harder to excite people in the comment section. But I appreciate you. So thank you for that, Sam. Keep doing what you're doing. And then we got Biggie in the room, I think, in the house. Thank you, Biggie, for coming in. Before I let Biggie jump in, Montetezi, you had a point or two to add to these things.
Yeah, I wanted to add on what you were saying and what my brother Jonas was saying here. That when you talked about the destruction of forest for agriculture, I think there is a field actually. There is a field called forestry and conservation. I think it's an education. You see, so already there are people in that field who probably advise you not to do that. You see, so there is also, I think, also what we need is also a synergy in these fields, some sort of, because if we had this, and also this the need to dominate in the education or no technology.
Yes.
To be I think we need to allow innovation in all fields. I think, like even in the conservation and forestry, you see, I think technology is just a tool that takes cues from all these other fields, so that we can, because if there is innovation in the forestry and conservation field, that's where technology gets the cue, takes the cue. So we need some technology here. When there is innovation in these other fields, I think that's where technology takes the cue. But to obsess to just technology on its own, I don't know. I feel like we should not neglect these other people. That's why I say this hierarchy of professions. I think we really need to address this. We need to destroy this hierarchy and just allow other professionals to do their job.
Tanzania, I think that's important. That it's not African. It's important because that's how it's seen here in the West. That's how there's hierarchy. There's hierarchy, CEO and chief this, chief that. It's hierarchical stuff. It's inherent in the system that we've adopted in the education system. So it's not something. It maybe has a thing of African hierarchical system, but it was born. The genesis is not African. The genesis.
No, I think the hierarchy I'm talking about is hierarchy that this profession is higher.
Yeah.
Is like maybe you find a doctor is much more higher in the hierarchy than maybe even a forest conservationist or a biologist is lower than
Yes.
There are just so many fields that you have this hierarchy that now when this other field, like when an engineer says, hey, I want to put a road through here, I think the conservationist needs to be consulted, and he needs to also say to put a stamp on it. If you understand what I'm trying to say, not that because the engineer has said, then there is now like a veto or something. And you find that now we are even Africa, as much as we are dependent on nature, we are destroying it, So I feel like that is what I keep saying, that every profession should be given equal and respect. That
I think to me, like behind that is take everything seriously. So if somebody is a forestry expert, right? But like, ecology, the understanding of ecosystem and how it's interrelated, they are experts at it. But the ecology, that which they study, is the thing that is what we are also caring for. If somebody is great at understanding farm technology and farm practices and has an expertise in it, is the farming in of itself is as an area of studies, area of knowledge that is important. So the interrelation, the people are the ones that bring the relationship between the different parts to it. One of the things I did in my project, one of the most interesting projects I've ever done, was a project I did in Butajra, somewhere in Ethiopia, where I work with farmers, local farmers, and where I was the operational lead, but I had to learn farming as a process. One of the things that we learned is something called permaculture. I don't know if you've heard of the term permaculture. It's essentially a type of agriculture that mimics the way forests are. Like forests in the ecosystem have a whole set of if a tree is suffering from disease, there's a medicine already that exists in that forest. From little things from microbials to the big things, there's an interrelationship that connects each one of them. So in permaculture, you mimic that. So if you have an avocado tree, you want to surround it with spices around it. Not just spices, shrubs. Not just shrubs. Even quick things like lettuce and also all sort of quick things that like lettuce, tomato, things like that. So the whole community of ecosystem is what you do in your farm. And hence, a 1 square meter area could produce multiple things at the same time and without having to use any pesticide or any synthesized fertilizer, and then maintain an organic farm that is incredibly productive. And then where do you copy? You copy the people who came up with the word permaculture. They studied the forest ecosystem, how the forest works, how the forest deal with algae that is killing plants, how the forest deal with microbials that is important for fertilization and refertilizations, or decomposition and recomposition, how the forest deals with like moving seedlings from one area to another area. All the entire ecosystem, they studied that and copied it in farming. We experimented that on the ground, and it was a wild success. It was an incredible success. The farmers are so successful right now. They are selling not just avocado, but all sort of things across it, from spices to like strawberry to bread, to all those different berries, to things that they consume at home in a small plot of land. So just wanted to add that to what Manditezi said. I have my experience to back it up. Let me bring Biggie in. He's waited very long to come in. Biggie, welcome. How are you, my brother? The voice. Biggie, are you there? Is it like Tanzan like yesterday? He's quiet or what? Like this is you did yesterday.
What are you saying?
No,
yesterday Tanzan disappeared on us.
Yeah.
No, Manditezi, you are one to speak. You called in and you fell asleep.
But this is what happens when you wait so long for.
Good evening.
Somebody says Nigatu Taka said, bad hairstyle, keep it up. It's not ethical. Apparently there's ethical spectrum about hairstyles.
I don't know if
have you ever seen?
I don't know if Sam is trolling or just making up stuff, but he's saying some very interesting things in the comment section. So
what is
I was
Samsung?
telling him I can't wait for him to come on to back up his claims. But Vicky, welcome. You're always the voice of reason and calm. So can't wait to hear from you. So yes, let us listen.
Good, as I always said, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And Prof. Ezra and Tanzan, one Izzy, Thomas. I was listening to him. A great show, and great topics. There's a lot of things that touched me, and when I came in, I was in the background sitting for a while. It was about engineering and certain discipline that you may study. Listen, for me, for all African brothers and sisters, get all the discipline that you can really think you're going to be great at it. One of the things that we're looking at is the demand supply. And one of the things that's really weak, from what I see, is going to be on the engineering, even though you can do a lot more with it. And the experts, it's all based on anything that you're going to be designing. And if an engineer, he can be in the software programming, he can be in different scripting, machine language. I mean, it has a whole array of things that it can do. Now we're talking electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, the same thing. And because I'm in that profession, and the way I started, okay, I was 12 years old when I was a mechanic. I was a transmission specialist at 12 because I read French and I was maintaining French transmission and I was good at it. But again, that's vocational. For me, it was a summertime jobs, and I ended up really during the year, it was like going 2 3 hours and really putting those transmissions put together. So the vocational part of it is, yes, is high demand because it's right there, break fix. So what we're trying to do is, instead of the break fix kind of attitude, is how to manufacture, how to recreate, how to create things on basic that I was saying. The creativity of the jobs, and put yourself in the supply chain that you can produce, that will make you a mark. The demand is like, oh, okay, am I going to hire the guy that you read on his resume? He's an engineer. The job that you have maybe is something to do with programming or something. If you don't ask the right questions, and he probably been exposed to that. So the in, engineers aspect of it is always there. They're available to do any kind of job, and it's up to the candidate that's going to present himself in any job interviews. But again, it's the demand. Okay, do we have a demand in Africa? And think about across all disciplines, not in just university, but at the same time with the vocational. So which one is going to be the highest? The vocational is like the demand, mechanics, woodworks, and a few other things, building homes, construction, anything that's related. In construction, you have engineering, okay? And at the same time, different others, you still have that domain. Because you're electrical engineer, don't define it that you're going to have to be working in electronics and stuff like that. It's just the demand and how it's like we have educated part that graduated in engineering or any other aspect of it. For me, I looked at it from ground up. I launched the very first PCS in the world. For me to get to that level, I had to go and scrub different level of understanding from the site acquisition, from site development, all the way through the design aspect of it. But is it my job, qualification? Not really, but I have the aptitude and a learning time, and I took that and learned. So I think for me, African brothers and sisters, any discipline that you think you're good at, it can be on a BS or a Bachelor of Science, it can be a Bachelor of Art. Uh, do whatever you can learn that can really enhance yourself, seeing yourself in different uh, domain of the work required or the job market. So my advice is to understand, because like I said last time, 80,000 of Indians. Um, graduate in engineering, and then out of those 80,000, few be selected to go through this different business school to make them understand really what they graduated in and what the possibilities are. So they show them in the business aspect of it. So we should have in Africa institution that's going to be really guiding them in the business sense of their field, what kind of job they can take. If it is not engineering, there is something that is attached to it. Let's say construction. On the construction, you're on the engineering side. Yes, on the construction side, also there's our demands where the engineering is going to be in line to it. So we need to have in the continent uh, an association or a faculty that you can really embrace all these different uh, disciplines and elaborating that, enhance the candidate mind. Where can he work? That's what we lack. It's not just because they graduated in engineering that he's going to be engineer. So we have to walk them into the field and the array available for them. And in fact, they can create projects that becomes a demand from the populace. They need this because now we have a body that can fulfill supply and demand. That's what we don't have. I don't know if I put a point in it, but I'll leave it to you guys.
I was muted. So I mean, you're right. I think like the demand is the determinant. Should be like what is the demand? What is going to be a demand? But if you look at the future, if you are like looking at the future, and imagine today is the future, 10 years ago, right? And like if somebody has thought, like this digitization is going to go somewhere, and if somebody was keenly looking at 10 years ago, the even money is going to be digitized in about 10 years because there were signs, because the bitcoins and all of those things didn't just show up. So they were there. They've been there. So somebody could have imagined, envisioned, to say, you know what, in 10 years' time, this thing is going to be big. So let's focus on creating institutions like the way Big is suggesting that will provide places for people to study those things that will be important in 10 years' time. And then you can think ahead right now and say, like, what is important in the next 10 years? Definitely there's going to be some kind of like even further digitization, like artificial intelligence, things like artificial intelligence are important. So AI is very at the early stage right now. But like, what about in the next, in the next 10, 20 years? What's the role of Africa in AI and machine learning? And what are the things that we could do as an institution to prepare people for that? I think like those countries that are doing that will take full advantage of that. I think the way Kenya took advantage of the mobile sector, the mobile banking, and then not just take advantage of it, takes the leadership to a point where the Western powers had to catch up. When they thought of catching up, they were looking at Kenya as an example and as a model. And I know people who actually went to study Kenya's model to really bring it here to this side of the equation where America needed to adapt, payments, mobile banking, mobile, all of that. And then guess what? The inspiration was an African country that thought that the future is in mobile and making banking mobile. And that brought about the Safaricom success that is exemplary. And so I think we could do similar things even more seriously and much more intently than any other things they have done. I think so this is about time to wrap up. I promise I'll end it by in the next 3 minutes. So I'll let Mikias and Tanzan and the rest of you guys, say a few things before we wrap up, okay? Mikias, please.
I can add some things on point. I was out for a little bit. I had to do something. Just to jump onto the topic that I reached. Like you said, I consider building an educated person, staying up to date with the developing process of in every sector. As you said, if an engineer is specialized on construction and other aspects, he also should stay up on point with the marketing part and the social part. Tanzan said it earlier, to create a full human in the aspect of helping the development of a nation and a continent, one person should be educated in every aspect to implement that. If I'm an engineer, I build a building. At the same time, I need to study the market. I need to study the environment conditions even more than just the basic parts. And then even when I employ people, they need to know about the construction part. I might not do all the marketing part, but I need to at least know how to manage those things. I think that's one of the links that's missing in our education, just to point out.
Thank you, Mikias. Tanzan, please. We didn't get to answer your question, but will be answered in the next session, even in much more depth. But I think with if you want to add a final thought to the conversation we had today, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been a very enlightening conversation, and I don't have an answer to my question. I just think it's something for us to think about as a people, because there is value in what we knew, our traditions, and I always go back to that, because I don't want to throw away everything that we knew as a people. I think there's a lot of value in our experiences and in our wisdom. And I think that's not to be discounted, but at the same time, I think that it's important for us to be competitive in the modern world. So we should somehow find a way to reconcile our traditions and the modern world in a way that benefits us as a people. So in summary, I would say scientificize. That's not a word, it's a word I made up, but scientificize our traditional practices. So we know that we had a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and if we can make that legitimate in the scientific process, I think that we can go a long way, because I don't want to discount our knowledge, because we had a lot, we had a lot of things that we did right. And if we can make that legitimate and we can make that, a part of the modern world, I think we would do much better than we're doing right now. So that's a step. You're muted, Professor Ezra.
I forgot. Okay, thank you. So thank you. I think sorry about that. So easy to forget that you're muted. So I think Mika's pointed out, it's important. We have an integrated view of things. I think the education should help with that. And I think what you are saying, to add to that, education should have a purpose of really capturing what we've lost, or what is kind of like disintegrated all over the place, and give it an education should allow for kind of the relearning of our values and relearning of our ways of doing things that are still there, that exist, but give it some kind of rigor, right? Some kind of rigor to it. So, and I think the purpose of education, the meaning of education, should be to provide structure and processes for the things that we learn, right? Not just to learn, but also give them structure and processes. And I think that's important. I really appreciate that point that you just made. So, Mondatezi, please. I'm leaving the big conclusion to Biggie. So, Mondatezi, please, if you have a final thought to give.
Nah, I don't have any final thoughts. So let me seize my time to give my final. We'll just talk next time.
I know it's not like a final thought for today, not a final thought of all thoughts.
Damn, monetize, that was weak.
You have a final thought. You have a final thought because I think that you were saying earlier, like we need to be what? We need to be like we need to bring in all different type of educations and different field of studies. We need to give equal credit and equal value, and then not bog down in hierarchy. And I think that's an important thing. I think the absence of meaning and the absence of purpose in the way the education is also created that. Because we think a lawyer is good because it gets them some job, or think doctor or a pilot, depending on what is important, what is valuable in the community at any given time. But it's all kind of screwed up to just follow that approach. Well, what we need as Africa is much more robust than that. So, yeah. So I wanted to, I could stress that as your final thoughts on your behalf.
Okay, let me add another thing to that. I think consultation between professions also creates a huge surface area for innovation. Like when you talked about the permaculture, you see, those are such things. They come through consultations between different professions and different different just fields. So when you're probably, that's why I say, when you're probably doing a project, or when you read and you probably see that you can consult somebody, probably that should be encouraged. Like when maybe when you're building a road or when you're building a house, or when you're farming, or any activity you're doing, even fishing, So yeah, consultation between professions should probably be encouraged. That's how you get a lot of innovations, when these people to brainstorm and come up with ideas. Yeah, I think that will be that will be my finishing point, my final point. That yeah, we need more consultation and synergy between professions.
Yes. Incredible. Thank you so much.
Before Professor Biggie goes, because I know he's going to be the wise counsel, because all of us are just amateurs. I would like to say I agree with Sam. You can make people interested in certain fields through marketing, and I would say we need to make science and engineering into gangsterism. We need to make that into like a cool thing where people want to get into it and conquer. We don't want to make scientists into nerds. We want to make them into the new trailblazers, and it's a cool thing to do and all that. So yeah, we should advertise it. It's a cool thing.
One of the things that I have done in my work as an educator building schools is that making being smart a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Like arguing, debating, discussing, interrogating, questioning, asking questions, being curious, interested, experimenting. All of these things were cool things. If you were in my school, if you were one of my students in my school, and then you did all those things, and the teachers are like bothered by you, and they come to explain to me, I'm like, come on. Like I'm gonna.
Maria Internet agrees with me, and so does Sam. Yeah, engineer gangsters.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, let me come down. Big E, voice of reason, bring us down.
There you go. I think we can push so much about education. There's no boundary, by the way. In education, is always new thing every time. It never change in just on the negative side, because it always gonna advance. Every discipline that you learn in educational level, master level, doctorate, professor level, all of them has to have a mechanism that they're all interrelated on any project that you're going to be taking. One thing that I want to say to Africa is, show me the money and I can build this for you. So we should have that attitude that we can build anything, but it has to be backed on knowledge, experience, and building that bridge between different African nations, because if you don't have it locally, you're going to attain it somewhere else. And bringing this kind of attitude is going to model Africa to the next century. So we're not looking just 2022, 21st century. We're looking at 22, 22nd century. So we have to really plan into bringing all this discipline, how they interrelate, because engineering will have something, the doctors will have something, all the science, all bachelor, in fact, Bachelor of Arts, they have other duties also, to a responsibility to put these knowledges put together, because they are really good into writing and relating each different disciplines. So for me, Africa should look from the point that I got all this resource, not only just mineral, but I have human resource, and how I'm gonna be really to the 21st century. We're not there yet. We're not there. Already when the internet was created, we became 500 years forward. I don't know which 500 years that they put us from, but at least we have a way to communicate. That gives us a better stand. And is how to create this platform where everything can be integrated, and on demand you have the supply. Because in that aspect of it, yes, Africa produces engineers, science, but are they up to the snuff? Are they up to date on what's going on in the technology sector? Are they up to date on how we're gonna be having an easy way to communicate? Because we don't. And at the same time, I'll volunteer. Anybody that want to go in the telecom field, I'll volunteer my time to walk you through it. I'm on the telecom side of it, okay? But at the same time, telecom is really the base, because when I launched the first PCS in the world, it means personal communication services. That means you can communicate to whoever, to whatever, to what time, including emergency services. We looked at it from safety aspect of it. If you really put in your mind, does all the continent has a system where you can call certain numbers and they will come in 5 minutes. If they don't come in 5 minutes, what can you improve? Now you're going to take all that assumption, and where you fail, where you don't have, this is where you can fulfill. I look at it from safety aspect of it to begin with. So any education that you're going to be using into applied science or applied uh, matter of motion, you're going to have to understand what my nation is lacking. Start analyzing. If you graduated in engineering, fine, because I keep saying engineering because that's my field. But if you are a doctor on healthcare, all that, it matters. The marketing part and the salespeople are very important. So the two goes hand to hand. But at the same time, the planners, the designers also got to support the marketing and the sales team. So my end on this conversation is, for me as an active One Africa, if anybody wants a direction or help when it comes to telecommunication or any IT services, you can communicate with me.
Yeah, you heard it here on our platform on education in the 21st century. If you want to be ready for that 21st century, and then you want to work on the 21st century technology, here you go. You got Biggie to who's promising you the education that you need. So please reach out to him. I really appreciate you guys. I have an appointment that I'm already late. I'm getting calls already. So I wish I could stay longer. And so I appreciate you guys for coming in and sharing with me. Today was about meaning and purpose of education. And how do we bring meaning? How do we give purpose to educations? And as even in the absence of resources. How can we make education so purposeful that even the absence of resources that we need to make it succeed doesn't hinder it, it doesn't stop it. So I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all the commenters and the participants on the comment sections. Really appreciate you so much, particularly Sam. Sam, like, you know, I really appreciate you. Tanzan, you your partnership here today has been incredible and critical, and all those people who have come to the live show, thank you so much. I want to make a quick prayer. You know, thank you for making the promise of success at the beginning of the show, and for making that promise come true. So I want to say thank you to God. Dear Lord, thank you so much for allowing us to come here in a new name, in your space, and then really discuss and understand what we are about, and making this platform a success it ought to be. We appreciate you and thank you for this. In Jesus' name, Almighty. Amen. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys. And I'll see you next week, hopefully with a guest or two. So thank you so much. Okay.
I said, oh, I was talking mute. Thank you so much, Ezra. That's well said. Good show. Anzan, Mondatezi, Thomas, that came in. Mr. Aim, that came in. And Sam, Marie Antoinette. I mean, you guys are doing a great job, even on the comment. Thank you so much.
I mean,
please subscribe.
Much love.
And yes, absolutely.
Much love.
Much love. Much
love. And then show your love. Like, subscribe, or make sure other people get back to. Let's get people who have gone away to come back, start listening to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Mwandatezi, you still there? Or you forgot to turn off. Oh. You forgot to turn off your thing, your stream.
Oh, the stream is still going on.
Apparently, you know, I think you just call in and then you go off on your work.
Now the host has gone. What do we do now?
What do we do? You know what? The last time this happened, it was me and Big E and Tunija, if you don't believe it. We were on 12 hours after the stream was gone. We just continued talking and talking and talking. You know how Africans are. They just talk. They don't know how to say goodbye.
But you know the stream is still going on. The stream is still going on.
I don't know. I think it's off now.
No, it's
is
on.
It? Hey.
It's on. It's on.
Okay. We'll just, let it go on until it goes off. So what happened yesterday? How do you just call and stay silent the whole entire stream?
No, let me tell you something. This is what happened. I was waiting for my turn to speak.
I gave you several chances. I was like, Mondatezi, you want to talk? You want to say something? Hey.
Okay. You see, I was waiting for my time to speak. Then I don't know what happened. It was the morning came, so I don't know.
I know what happened. You just went on a walk and forgot you were online. Or you had one of those umeweka tu nini phone hapo alafu unaenda unalala unaone si ndio unafikiria sikujui ati unajua zile vitu za make an appearance
nilikuwa niko si ati nilikuwa nangoja kuongea lakini sasa hiyo time ya kungojea sijui you probably
nenda huko
nikajipata tu ziko sasa hiyo tu ndio kweli hapo hiyo time nilikuwa narudi Mika wants to finish the stream so
Sawa. Haya.
Okay, Mika, sawa Mika.
Sawa Mika. Tumalize, si ndio? Si ati new topic imeanza. Unajua vile Waafrika kusema goodbye, kwa heri ni ka ritual. Ati okay, I'm going to go. Yes, you go. It's time to go. You go. No, it's okay. You don't have to go right now. Okay, sawa. We get the hint. It's not our stream.
Kama mwenyewe ameenda pia tu, mwenye nyumba akitoka pia tutoke na wageni tumebaki.
Tumekaa hao alafu mtu ameshaenda.
Mwenye nyumba ametoka, wageni tumebaki. Ni wageni wabaya.
Mgeni siku ya kwanza. Unajua hiyo?
Sawa. Countdown basi tumetoka